So I have in the studio Roxon Nelson Dapamakbo. He is a member of Parliament for South Dying, legal practitioner, and someone who is also a lawyer is Andrew Japamesa, also member of Parliament for Sekendi. Both of them are in the studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's good,
good morning, Roland.
What do you call your holiday is what, recess?
It's not a holiday, Roland. It's a general. It's a general.
You're chilling.
No, we aren't.
Of course, Parliament.
What have you
on
been up
recess,
to?
Save that.
You mean you've been working?
We've been working. The committees are working.
You've been having holidays.
No, that's the point I'm making. That there's a general there's a general misconception that once we are on recess, we go back and relax. No, indeed, it is during that period that we do a lot of the legwork. We do a lot of the committee work. You see the appointments committee, for instance, working, the public accounts working, because their work it's now become a matter of media coverage. So theirs is more known. But there are a lot of committees. As I speak to you, 2 or 3 committees are meeting this morning. I have a long schedule of, activities, constitutional and legal and parliamentary affairs scheduled from next week. Long. We are going to consider a lot of the bills before we come back,
at the committee level.
At the committee level. And we must do that before a plenary, before we resume,
I see.
to present our report. And then also we are engaging our constituents. I've been away for like 2 weeks. I know.
I did the first phase.
Yes.
Week that I was
you have even faced it.
Yes,
of course.
Otherwise you can't.
It takes a lot to tour the entire constituency and explain what it is that has been happening in the past year, more like. And so hopefully I'll do the second phase and complete the entirety of the constituency before we go back.
Yeah. I saw in the Daily Heritage newspaper that you had donated, you as member of Parliament for South Dying, you made donation to health facilities in the constituency.
Yes, particularly about 2 weeks ago, there was a very touching story from Jacare Health Post, for instance, that when they admit patients, they have no hospital beds to, as it were, to offer them in order for whatever treatment they can give. So they are practically, they lie on the floor for the nurse. And it was a picture actually of the nurse squatting with the patient lying on something that was looking like a mattress on the floor, and it shocked my conscience. So quickly I had to do something. I had to organize some hospital beds, delivery beds, and also not for Jacare alone, but for Vegbe Health Post, Bebe Health Post, and Chanakbe Health Post, as well as the Peki Government Hospital itself, with some other medical supplies. So,
So you are agents of development.
Change.
Yes.
So
when you are campaigning and you are promising the roads and all that, and the constituents are descending on you, it's understandable.
You see, the roads, you can't. What you can say is that you will make the efforts to ensure that government prioritizes it. That's all there is to it. You can't. Okay. We are incapable of constructing roads.
Of course, we don't have a budget.
All right.
That necessarily goes into, well, you can say that there's some portion of the common fund that is set aside for MPs to do some projects, but those are not sums that can construct.
My brother, I wanted to seal potholes when they brought me the bill. So now I have to go and lobby.
You wanted to seal potholes on
some tarred roads.
Yes. Not feeder roads.
Yeah, they are feeders. They are feeders, but tarred. But they have developed summer potholes in Peki and Kwali to Parliament to Germany. When they brought me the bill, it's an incredible sum.
You loved it.
Even that is to fill in potholes, not to construct the road.
Well, let's move on. Let's get into the substantives. And the president met with top religious leaders in our country. And, many were thinking it would be on the National Cathedral. But, of course, they didn't talk about the National Cathedral. But what the papers, as well as mainstream media, Joy, we also reported, was the issue of churches paying taxes or not. And we also know that what the regulation says is what it says. If you write books, you pay. You definitely would have paid if you operate. Now, let's get into the substantive. The Ghana Revenue Authority, with its lead commissioner, had been saying that they would want the churches to pay taxes, etc., on activities that are for profits, that bring them income or bring them revenue. Now, where do you think, within the milieu of the meeting that the president, or the conferment that the president had, okay, with the religious bodies we're talking about, as far as payment of so-called taxes are concerned?
Well, good morning to my very good friend, Roxanne Nelson, yourself, and our cherished viewers this morning. I wasn't surprised at all that the issue of the National Cathedral did not come up at the president's deliberations with the selected church leaders yesterday, because the National Cathedral really is not a new issue. The president announced it the first time, I believe last year, when he was on his way to the 6th March Independence Anniversary celebration. And of course, this year as well, he outdoored the architectural drawings that had been done. Of course, it's the selection of the land, or the coming into the public space of the location, that generated some level of, if you like, excitement, and people were making comments about it. But yesterday's meeting essentially is the president's own regular schedules that he's designed to meet some religious leaders and some other stakeholders within our country regularly. And so when he met them, of course, the discussions that had been set out was essentially to have some further dialogue with them on full implementation of our law, because taxing of commercial income of churches is statutory. It's a legal regime. Our tax laws require that income that is generated in Ghana from any business activity necessarily ought to attract some taxation. Of course, the church's own income, if you like, because it is not commercial, because they are incorporated as companies limited by guarantee, not intended for profit making, those incomes are not subject to tax. And that position hasn't changed. But we all know that apart from their core function, many of the churches also engage in some business activity that necessarily bring them some profit, that potentially may be treated as part of the church's non-commercial revenue that it generates from its activities. And so it's important that a clear distinction is made between those incomes, such that those that are supposed to be subject to tax is applied. I guess that's what informed the Commissioner General's statement a couple of months ago, which, was misconstrued to mean that government was about to tax churches, churches, and by which I mean the income that is not derived from business operations. And so it was important for the president to add his voice at a forum like this to clearly indicate to the churches what it is really that the focus of that decision is. It's nothing new. It's not intended to tax churches as churches, but the business incomes that are ordinarily subject to taxes in accordance with our tax laws. And clearly from the story, there was unanimity. The churches agreed that yes, explanation, of course, is consistent with our law. As law-abiding citizens, by which I mean the churches themselves being citizens of this country, corporate citizens for that matter, they would abide with the law of the country, and incomes that are derived from businesses that is subject or ought to be applied by way of taxation ought necessarily to happen, because we all know what it is that tax revenue is intended to achieve. Of course, we all collectively contribute into a certain national kitty that we expect our elected officers to apply it for providing social services, roads, hospitals, schools, and all that. And so yes, it's a difficult task to undertake, that is payment of taxes, but it's a necessary contribution that, pursuant to the social contract that we have with the state, we all ought to make a contribution. So I am excited that some clarity has been brought to the issue. Misconception that was out there suggesting that government was coming to tax churches as churches is not really the case, but this is only in federals of our tax laws to make sure that we generate sufficient funds to fund our development agenda.
Mr. Dapampo, you go to church?
I do.
Now, regularly you look at the activities of the churches, which are taxable, which already also are being taxed, are well known. What do you think there are? And then which ones also perhaps are just in between the lines, really?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. Let me say good morning to my constituents in Pekik, Balekwewe, Tongo, Jemenia, Jibwi. I was struggling to understand my brother for the first time. He made the point, and correctly so, that our tax laws are very clear as to what revenues we can tax from entities. Now, are we saying that the churches do not pay tax, for instance, on the non-core income generating activities that they undertake? For instance, I am a member of the EP Church, so I will use the EP Church as an example. The EP Church, apart from conducting its normal church business, which is winning souls, preaching and all that, it engages in other non-core activities. It has built a lot of hospitals and clinics across the country. That is, so it has veered into healthcare delivery. It's doing business in the healthcare subsector of the economy. And I believe that for all the medical supplies that they purchase, they pay the relevant taxes. For all the health personnel that work with them, they pay their payee, that's their tax on income, or income tax. For all the constructional projects that they undertake to build the infrastructure to run the hospitals and the clinics, they pay the relevant VAT or whatever taxes. If it's land they acquired,
where applicable.
Where applicable. Now, my church also does business in the education subsector. Yes, we have built a lot of schools and universities and colleges. Now, I believe that, like I made the point before, all the appropriate taxes that you have to pay in the course of undertaking these projects will be done. So when the government says we want to look at churches paying taxes, what are we looking at? Is it the tithe that I pay to the church, or the offertory that people offer on Sundays to the church, or when crusades, so that it will affect other charismatic churches, because their operations are slightly different from the Orthodox. So unless the GRA is saying that, the point he made, applying the law strictly to these activities, they have relaxed, because they think that these are organizations existing on the books as companies registered by limited by guarantee. And I don't think that is what they do. because the church activities, the non-core ones, attract the appropriate taxes. In fact, you don't even need a GRA, because if you purchase goods, the VAT, the person who is selling will give you a VAT receipt. You know,
those are indirect taxes that, you know, we all, to the extent that we go to the market, necessarily pay.
Exactly my point.
Some income that
perhaps, as far as we're concerned,
exactly
maybe the argument
yes.
could also be relatedly be attributed to the whole concept of what the church does these days, especially the non-orthodox ones, in which they don't take care of schools. Maybe a couple of them may have a university here and there. Now, people within the church, leaders of the church, write books, may be published, but then there are books that are sold on the outside, but also the books are recommended for church members.
Exactly, and I'll even make the further point.
Now,
let me make the further point. You are eating my time away.
Okay.
The further point is that, for instance, if a Japa is a preacher, with is a Methodist, I know.
No, I'm an Anglican.
Anglican, okay. Yep. Now, if as an Anglican preacher, as a lawyer and a preacher occasionally, he's invited outside to preach huge seminars.
Let's say he goes to the US.
Huge, yes, seminars for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. He will be given what we call a token. Our tax laws are saying that once he brings in that money, it is taxable. But the question is, are these declared? Maybe these are the things we should interrogate.
You see, I suspect.
Or the further point is that when you incorporate an entity as limited by guarantee for purposes of, because there are other limited by guarantee companies that are not churches, they do other businesses. When you say that you are incorporating this business limited by guarantee, and your core business is to go into church business, sometimes that's the way they write it, church business. What exactly do you mean? So that if as a church, as an entity, you intend to, for instance, go into the hotelier business or the tourism subsector, you want to run restaurants like others are doing now. I know churches that are running big hotels, guest houses. They have transport companies that have a lot of buses. If you want to do that, then you must incorporate a separate entity for it.
I think that's what they do. That's what they do.
You know, a lot of them
don't
a lot of them bring them under the aegis of the church name, you know, under the umbrella name, and they operate and they do their businesses. Maybe this is where we should begin to look at carefully.
Okay.
But otherwise, the argument will remain that for all the instances I've cited, I don't think any of these churches don't pay taxes in respect of these matters. So if we are saying that they should pay tax now, then we are looking at the tithe I pay, the offertory I give, or what else? What other revenues that go to the church that we speak of? You understand my point?
Okay. On TV, I don't know whether it's a form of advertisement, and if you're advertising for goods and services, it means that you're advertising for a return.
Media houses,
no, wait, for a return.
Yes.
You've paid the cost of the advertisement being there.
Of course.
But then
that you'll be patronized.
Inherent or the content of the advert says that come and buy my water for 100 Ghana cedis.
No, to attract sales.
Come and see me on Wednesday for 100 Ghana cedis before the consultation. But then the seeing me is at the church premises. It is a church activity, but you are paying 100 Ghana cedis before you see me.
It's a consultation. It's called consultation fee.
They are what every sector and sphere of life, and their terminologies. Do you understand? So I don't know whether I can draw.
It's a difficult area.
And you can see that the money is coming in. Let's say you're a finance guy in the church. You see that there are bag loads of money that are packed every Wednesday or something.
That's precisely the reason why we are having a conversation about it. And that's precisely the reason why the Ghana Revenue Authority may have spoken about it. Because clearly, if the income or you are engaging in a not-for-profit activity, you can't be taxed. But if you are engaging in for profit activity.
How do you distinguish that?
Precisely.
Exactly. That's the point.
That's the challenge. And so the Ghana Revenue Authority, because
you have paid 100 Ghana cedis for water, but that water, it's a prerequisite for you to come and see me.
For spiritual reasons.
Yes.
For faith reasons.
So
I
you have paid
that
you let him
all this revenue that is derivable from clear business is commingled with funds like tithes and offerings that clearly are not business revenue to the church. So there's a challenge. How do we isolate your funds to clearly assign ones that are not supposed to be taxed and ones that are clearly, for all intents and purposes, business income? And so engaging them in the conversation to, as it were, get them to abide by the law is something worthy of undertaking. And of course, we all would be up in arms when our offerings, which we have donated to the enhancement of the work of God, which we all know is not subject to tax,
right,
is being taxed. And I from all the statements that have been made out there by officialdom, that is not the intendment of the Ghana Revenue Authority. It's just ability to distinguish what business income is. And I know that usually in instances like that, because of the need to broaden the tax net that we have always talked about, they would develop appropriate regulation to as it were, enable them manage that space.
Well, before you come in, let's just get to the president. We have an insert of the president and then also the church leaders.
Oh, yesterday.
On a periodic basis, it would be good for me to meet with you so that we can also deal with matters that are of concern to you and matters that are of concern to me as the head of government. And I'm hoping that what we're doing here today is going to be a regular feature of my governance. So something like a couple of times a year, we'll have an opportunity to meet, and I will hear your considerations, and you will also hear the things that are on the heart and minds of government, because it's important that from the different angles from which we approach the public interest, we work together. Work together doesn't mean that we have to agree on everything. Work together means that we have an attitude of cooperation, an attitude which is that we can jaw, we can talk about matters, and we will try and find a way that together, collectively, we address the public welfare of our people.
Consensus was that there is no church organization, be it the Catholic Conference or the Charismatic Associations or the Pentecostal or Christian Council, that opposes the view of the churches being taxed. It's just the manner in which things are done that we raised some concerns. Then again, our thoughts have also been that there should be continuous engagements and there should be a regulatory body, so that it's not seen that it's the government that wants to do that, but a regulatory body has actually been put in place to be able to...
Yes, taxes are very necessary and it's important. For every meaningful citizen, you should believe in taxation. But is it just taxing the church that makes the solution, or we should know what aspects of the church can be taxed? If there are businesses that the church is doing and it receive remuneration, then when they make profit, the profits are taxable. But if it's a church itself, then I think we are not getting the picture out there right.
Oh, no. The point is that churches already pay taxes as individuals. And then churches also pay taxes on businesses that they set up. So now it must be much more of a permanent issue in the context of the fact that everybody is made to do what is already there. There's already a law governing taxes to be paid. So with the regulatory bodies being set up, then everybody will be compelled to do what is right. So that is basically what it is.
I think I share the president's concern when probably he was misunderstood or taken out of context. And now he clarified that. So even from the Muslim point of view, if there are Muslim NGOs, organizations that are engaging in private things and ventures that are intended to make profit, I mean, why not? I mean, Muslim organizations that are engaging in private commercial ventures must pay their taxes. Must pay their taxes. I think that one, there's no, yeah. And I mean, we build a nation by tax. I mean, so that the financial state of the country, whatever venture, whatever project the government will do, it comes more from the taxes that we have. And I think that, but to say that probably charity things that are coming from within, like others have expressed their view, those are non-taxable things because they are charity. But I believe that in principle, that if a religious body is engaging in private venture for profit, that body must be taxed.
And so, Nelson, your take on this?
Yeah, so if you had Sheikh, you will see that, and if you had Reverend Dr.
Lawrence Tete.
Yes, Lawrence Tete. They made the point that they already pay taxes. But the issue is, we have to be honest as a people and as a church. We're just off camera, we're just making the point that even when you receive gifts, the law is very clear that you must pay taxes on a gift. That is gift tax. But how many of our church leaders or pastors or bishops declare gifts that
even
they
individuals?
Receive? Yes. No. Right now it is the church that is in contest. So I'm placing the argument in contest. The worry, if we have a record, a database of pastors who declare gifts for which they pay the appropriate rate as tax, I don't think this matters, because they would have produced those records. But because we don't have them, that is why this matter is coming up. But I want to hear the GRA say that there should be a distinction between the core church activities and the non-core church activities. That is what will help them to deal with these matters. Because like my brother said, once they are commingled, how do you treat a holy water that is supposed to heal somebody spiritually? Do you treat it as a religious artifact?
You mean the sale of holy water?
Yes. As a religious artifact that is treated in Rome, so that when I buy a statue of Mary, it is treated as a separate business, even though it brings income to the church, so it's taxed appropriately. Because yes, in the shop,
commodity.
Exactly, in the shop you pay. They calculate it for you to pay. You know, so these are the issues. You pay consultation fee. What is that? Is that a core church business or non-core church business?
Churches collect consultation.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. They borrow the term from us lawyers. You understand?
Or doctors.
You go to churches, even the Orthodox churches now, they have a long queue of people who want to see the pastor, the resident pastor or the bishop. And so by necessary implication, they are asked to pay something.
Not the Orthodox church.
Some do now.
Your church?
No, not my church, but some do now. But it is more prevalent in the charismatic church, especially the smaller ones.
But you're not saying EP you do that?
No, EP we don't do that.
You can headline it
I
for you.
I walk straight to my district pastor's residence, Pastor E's residence,
all right,
and engage him. So, GRA should be. All this talk is about the fact that GRA should be up and doing. They should apply the laws. They already exist, and if they do, we can make a headway in this discussion. Yeah.
Well, we're always consulting and trying to get the better of the argument as far as many other things are concerned. But over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, the banks have been under scrutiny or radar, not only in the public space, but across the media as well. Many people of varied persuasions have made numerous comments, whether to the advantage of the individuals who have been affected or to the disadvantage of the shareholders, or just a cacophony of issues. But at the end of the day, when entities go down under, and we're talking banks, we have 7 banks now, 2 a year ago, and the workers had been crying over the last 2-3 weeks about not receiving any severance. Now, we also have 5 additional banks in addition to the 2. The first one, we're told that, well, there was a certain transition, and so there was this absorption by the Ghana Commercial Bank. And following that, we've had initially the concerns of how Unibank was not well structured or operating went into administration. Subsequently, we've had what we call a consolidation. But in all, we have over 1,000 workers who have been affected, either directly or indirectly.
1,005.
Yeah, 1,007 really, if you look at the numbers that have been bandied around. Some of them may not necessarily be permanent staff and all. But how do we treat the workers in the whole process of whether it is a liquidation or a bank going into administration or consolidation in the first place, as far as what the regulations are concerned? Kojo Youngson and I were having an argument about that this morning. Many of us, so we all speak to various professionals and they give us their own bit as to what their knowledge level is on the subject. Let me start with you on this.
I mean, to be honest, the conversation that we had prior to our coming on set has probably given me cause to look at the law again, pretty much closely.
Which one? The one that
the Labour Act.
The Labour Act.
Yeah, not
or the one that
even
liquidates.
the Labour Act. Yes, I mean the Banks and Deposit taking Institutions Act to really determine whether the consolidation amounts to a liquidation of the 5 banks, or it's really an amalgamation of the operations of the 5. And it's not something that I have taken a closer look at, because, of course, the statement that was issued, the report, the KPMG report that we all saw, made us all shift to a situation where the bank was applying some provisions of the Banking and Deposit Taking Institutions Act, where the thinking was that these banks had been liquidated. But like I said, it gives, there's some cause for taking a second look at it to make an appropriate determination, because all along, if it was a straightforward liquidation, then clearly the institutions will cease to exist, and the assets that are realized by the liquidator, that's what is happening. But that's why I said that it gives me cause to take a second look at it to see whether really, if it was a straight liquidation, entities would have ceased to exist. But here is a case where the assets, or some assets, have been absorbed or put together or consolidated to form another institution. So that's the liquidation rules that set out a clear priority as to how the distribution of assets that are realized applicable in this particular situation. I do not have an immediate answer. But with the publication and the appointment of the liquidator and all the steps that are being taken to realize the assets of the banks, clearly staff are not in a good position at all.
Why is that?
Yeah, because the order of priority in terms of who gets to be paid first, they are at the latter end of the entire table. I believe they are the 9th or 10th in the order of priority. And so, yes, unfortunate as the situation is, unfortunate as some of the directors and shareholders' actions have led to the Bank of Ghana taking the steps that they did, primarily to avert a situation where people who innocently had deposited their funds in these banks would have lost them. And of course, it is obvious to everyone that that would have been a much more catastrophic outcome than because millions of people are involved. Whole lot of people. I understand close to 10 million depositors have funds in these banks which would have been lost but for the intervention of the Bank of Ghana. But I feel for the staff who have been affected by the decisions that in many instances they were not part of, which has led to the collapse of the banks. And I think that whatever it takes, that has to be done. You know, this morning was a bit of refreshing, of course, in the context of the situation that we find ourselves, that the management of Consolidated Bank were providing some training to, as it were, assist those who would not be engaged in finding alternative livelihoods. It is not the best.
Psychological?
Yeah, of course. It is not the best. You. And I mean, it's a serious matter. I mean, I have kids, you know, who are just about to reopen school, and I know the hit that I have to be taking, you know, because my second son is going to year 1 in another school, and you have to pay admission fees plus school fees, and the 2 others who are already in the regular streams school fees itself. You know, so, and majority of the people who work in banks are middle-aged, you know, people who have young families that they're taking care of. And so to lose your job at the time when clearly you have obligations, including your children's school fees and all that, is a tough one. And I feel for many of the people who have had to find themselves in this situation. But Roland, you see, I've had calls on government to, as it were, mitigate some of these suffering that people may be suffering by way of providing them with some severance, if you like. But you know that already a lot has gone into saving these banks and depositors. Many of the liquidity support that was provided by the Bank of Ghana were all taxpayers' funds. You recall that government had to raise some bonds to even cushion UT Bank and Capital Bank.
And now subsequently we're having...
And now we have
the 5, consolidated
other 5 on our hands. So to what extent can government intervene and continually provide taxpayers' money to as it were, cushion some of our unfortunate brothers and sisters? It's a very emotional matter, and so it's a tough one. I mean, you can see the obvious challenge that I'm having in talking about this, but let's see how things pan out.
The Capital Bank and UT Bank. Well, I remember just about 2 weeks ago, I spoke to some finance people, a number of lawyers, and they said it was a partial liquidation. Subsequently, GCB was made to take over the assets of the 2 banks, and in the process of liquidation, the liquidator, and this time it was PricewaterhouseCoopers, if I remember, for the 2 banks last year. What usually was supposed to be their responsibility, or is the responsibility of the liquidator as far as when it comes to the workers?
Okay. Now, if you look at what has been happening so far, and I'll take it from the first instance as well as the second one. Now, what the Bank of Ghana has done, if you look at all the relevant laws, there are a lot of laws at application here. Now, if you look at the entire exercise, they have actually liquidated the institutions, the banks. But you see, they are the regulator. So if you look at the Bodies Corporate Official Liquidators Act, Act 180, Section 9, thereabout, and subsection 1, from subsection 1A to about M, it gives you the functions of the official liquidator, what it should do in when these matters arise, or in circumstances like this. So in the instance of the Capital Bank and the UT Bank, what the regulator did was that, yes, because of this, I am liquidating you, but I'll place you in receivership. In law, we call it in receivership. Sure. When they are placed in receivership, it says, okay, then I will appoint an entity to take care of it, to sift the assets and the liabilities, and manage the situation. They have such powers under Section 9, 1 sub A to M. Yeah, there are plethora of functions they must perform. So they gave that function to the commercial bank. They placed the two banks in receivership. That is why they assured the depositors or customers that your monies are assured. We are doing everything to secure them. That's why they went after assets and some portions of the liabilities, if you recall. So that is what the Ghana Commercial Bank has been doing so far. So depositors now can access their funds from Ghana Commercial Bank. Now what will happen is that if I were a customer, then I can decide to drain my account and change a bank. Or if I have confidence in the new system, I will maintain my investment with Ghana Commercial Bank. So they did two things. They placed the two banks in receivership, but offloaded it to Ghana Commercial Bank. Because if it were in the strictest sense of acquisition or a measure, there should be money exchanging hands. There should be payment for valuable consideration. They will be acquiring their interest in the entity, and so you have to pay for those valuable, for those interests. That's what we call valuable consideration. Nothing like that happened. Now, in the second instance, they applied the same method. Regrettably, they applied the same method. They placed the 5 banks in receivership, but with the same stroke of pen, created another entity and handed the management of the receivership into the hands of the new entity to manage. Now, in the course of managing this, as I was outlining the functions of the official liquidator, they have to do certain things to ensure that the business, to safeguard the interests of the business, as to which creditors to pay first and all that. The priorities are listed. We all know them. But in any acquisition of this is like a pseudo acquisition of this nature, you must engage the workers, and the Labor Act is very clear. It's a form of restructuring. You must engage the workers. Those who survive, you move forward with them. Those who didn't survive, their severance package, like you spoke about, must be well negotiated. But as you recall, this happened overnight, and so these legally ordained steps that had to be taken are now being taken as an after ipso facto the event. They are now going back to engage the workers, to speak about severance package, and that is being done vis-a-vis the fact that reapply. Then we assess your performance, either if you were with Beige, you were with the
other one,
Royal and all those banks.
Unibank.
Then they will assess your performance. If you are worthy of moving forward with us, we'll move with you. If we were not, then they negotiate, with you regarding your severance. But I can understand that this is happening in no other month than in August, where kids are going back to school, and not just within the year, but this is You know, people are moving on to the next level. They are getting promotion. They are moving to the next class.
And even it's even a period where many corporate institutions undertake some strategic activities.
I agree.
For the next year.
Where rents are due and all. You know, there are lots
they look at new businesses.
Lot of domestic.
You go into a lot of meetings these days, and
exactly.
But then,
if I may wind up.
Okay.
So we want to call on the Bank of Ghana through one, commercial bank, and two, the newly created consolidated bank, to expedite the process, to reduce. You see, the not knowing is the worst part of the agony. You know, not knowing the outcome of what I will get, not knowing what is happening, makes people agonize. So they should deal with these matters expressly, and people will know where the axe has fallen.
Okay.
So they can reorganize themselves.
It's been a year.
Move forward.
It's been a year since
in respect of UT and consolidated.
Yeah, okay.
No, a capital bank.
Capital bank. And it's been a year. There are agitations in there. And I was arguing with Kojo Yankson that for all the arguments that are being made, it could just be because it's been made out of emotion or more of a moral issue than anything, because the processes may have been stated. But then it's not a straightforward thing, and he also indicated as
absolutely.
Well. So who takes care of who, and how quickly?
If the
how quickly do the parties get the compensations as and when it is due them?
You see, Roland,
it's a tedious process. So
Roland, if government had not intervened and these banks had collapsed, the issue of severance really would not have come up.
But you have done that, so
yes, of course. I mean, but you see, the objective of what it is that government did shouldn't be lost on all of us. Because if government had not intervened and these banks had collapsed, depositors' funds, like happened in the case of DKM and Godislav and all the others, is what would have happened. And still people would have lost their jobs. And depositors would have lost their funds. But government had to intervene to primarily save that situation from arising.
And now the workers.
I agree. But so that's why I said that if the banks had collapsed by themselves, issue of severance would not have arisen. Because, well, shareholders set up their business, engaged you. Unfortunately, for some reason, they are unable to continue operations of the company. And so they will sell the assets of the company and then pay in accordance with the priorities that are stated in the law. And if it gets to the employees of the company and there's still some more funds, then that conversation will be had. That's exactly the situation that we find ourselves in as we speak. And so I agree with you. There is the emotion, you know, is the pain that people are going through that we all empathize with. But the reality on the ground is that that is what it is.
Okay. Please, you wanted to make a call. I wanted us to look at the
yes. You see, for me, it's not about emotions. It's about the operations of the law. We have kicked into motion a certain legal process. It comes with legal consequences. So we must deal with those.
But I thought that it was in respect of the...
What Kojo said.
No, the employees who have to lose their jobs.
Yes.
That's where we are empathizing with.
No.
Because the process, if you follow the process, then, you know, what is contained in the law regarding who gets paid first is what is going to be applicable. And when we get to the employees and there's still some more money then that conversation will be had at that point.
You see, I will agree with you if you have placed the entities in receivership simpliciter. You haven't placed them in receivership simpliciter. You have handed the exercise over to another entity to operate as a commercial entity now. So the whole process...
But for good reason.
Exactly. I agree. I agree that for good reason.
In order not to lose the 100%.
Exactly. So
So you want to save the 80%.
Exactly. Some maybe 60,
another,
70.
Another 20% are crying.
But I am saying that critical 30% that will go home, 40% that will go home, even if it's 50%, let us expedite the legal process in respect of their severance package. Right. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so we have to end the conversation, but I just wanted
you rather should be in terms of the liquidation process.
Okay.
Because payment or severance would only arise as a result of the payment, realizing the assets and paying those that ought to be paid.
But you have recapitalized the entity. That's all you have done.
Yeah, with the bonds.
Yes, you have recapitalized them, so they are new entities. That's where the convoluted nature of the whole thing.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me just give you 2 minutes. I have to end. You've been following the issue with the GNPC CEO and the approvals, the approval he made subsequently for payments. For that new office, 7.5 million from a company that he used to be a director for, an executive director for. So I just want your issues or your comments on those lingering issues of conflict of interest or not.
Two things.
Just 2 minutes, sir.
Yes, two things. I have seen his memo, and the tenor of the memo is what worries me. In the memo, he didn't refer to a board decision. He says that I am authorizing the payment for this transaction, and I'll take full responsibility. He didn't say the board, unless otherwise.
But he made reference to the share purchase agreement, the sale and purchase agreement.
Exactly. No. I just wanted, because you see, when you send a memo of that nature, you ought to have
internal memo.
Yes.
Perhaps
internal.
Yes.
Perhaps inadvertent.
No.
Please.
Look at the tenor of the memo. Ejapa, you and I, look at the tenor of the memo. Unless we are saying that the board will ratify that decision later on. But I haven't seen that from the statement.
Well, the board had approved for the payment to be,
for
the purchase to be made.
Did you see where he says I take full responsibility for this?
Because
the payment, he's the managing director. He's supposed to finally say that
you can't write a memo like that.
Why not?
You can't utter a memo like
that.
Why
not?
You understand? You have to say that per the board decision on so and so and so and so date, you are hereby authorized.
And in the absence of that being made reference of in the letter?
How? All that I see is that I am authorizing you to do this urgently and I take full responsibility.
But there's a certain history.
To what?
Of an approval at the top level, the board.
When? Did you gather that from the memo? You only made reference.
You see?
No. You let me finish. Then you can make your point.
It's only 2 minutes. Your time.
Yes. No. My time is not. And then I remember that when they came to Parliament, the estimate that he brought and we approved was about 2 million. I referred to the estimates that they brought. It was about 2 million. We also told that the value is actually $9.5 million and not a 7.2.
We're told that could be just after the normal tax.
You know, why? Withholding tax is 3%. So I just want us to be very careful in how we spend the public purse. When they came, even the 2 million, it generated furor in the house. You know. So GNPC, they should just be careful. That's all I would say.
Look, Roland, I think that if there's some wrongdoing, by all means, let's investigate and bring people to account. I'm not about to make any suggestion to shield anybody. But I have read the memo. I have listened to the chief executive. There's no issue. So let's not make it seem as if there's one. Please, let's distinguish clearly the procurement process and then the payment. He's saying that, look, because of my relationship with the company, which I disclosed to the board, the subcommittee that was set up by the board to execute this transaction, I did not participate at any time during the procurement process. That was completed, the transaction closed. He authorized by the board to sign the purchase agreement, which he did. Procurement is closed. Next step was the payment of the invoice that had been submitted, which had to go through some pre-audit process. Of course, the auditors to check whether there's board approval, execution of the the purchase agreement and all that before the authorized payment. The officer in charge was not there. So he, as chief executive, said, look, I signed the purchase agreement. So go ahead and pay. I'll take responsibility. And we are attributing wrongdoing.
Ejapa,
why do we do this?
Ejapa, I am not attributing wrongdoing.
No, but that's exactly what you guys are doing in the media space.
I am saying
now all of a sudden, please, what are you talking about? And you determine how he writes an internal memo. What are we talking about?
Andre Japamesa, we have to end. Andre Japamesa is a member of parliament for Sekondi. Thanks for joining me. And then also Roxy Nelson Dapamako is a member of parliament for South Dine. Both of them are lawyers. For good reason. When they argue, well...